Yo, what is up guys, this is TyrantXSwine here and welcome to another sort of special video. This is technically sort of like an expansion of the Mass Effect review, but in some ways it's kind of the start of another sort of series that I'm thinking of doing, which is pretty much talking about certain random subjects from my point of view in some cases. And so to begin this, I'm going to be talking about the Mass Effect 3 endings. Now we all know the Mass Effect 3 endings are probably one of the most controversial things in video game history, since an ending that bad for a series this good, it's always going to be a tough subject to cover. But I am definitely one of those people who did really see the endings as a huge pain in the ass, because especially if you're a fan of Mass Effect from the very first Mass Effect, which is like 2007. If you were playing the Mass Effect games since then, and then got to the end of Mass Effect 3, and like even after you got all of the galactic readiness stuff and all the your fleet has all been built up and all the equipment you've gained and stuff for the Crucible, pretty much got everything to 100%. Then you get to the ending and pretty much you find out all your choices did not matter. And that is a really painful thing to like comprehend, because there's only 3 endings, and each of them being a different colour, which is kind of funny in itself. But it's fact, originally, before the extended cut came out, you really only got to see like what the Crucible did, like what effects it did, but then you didn't see the aftermath of like what the effects of the galaxy it did to it. And this really annoyed some people, because they wanted to find out what happened to everyone else. Because it's like after you set off the Crucible, then you see the Normandy has crashed on a planet, and then that's it. You just see your crew come out of the ship, and then you practically just see him looking at a new planet, and then that's it. You don't really get to see what happens next, and it really sucked for a lot of people, including myself. And it was a massive betrayal, really, from BioWare themselves, or EA, whichever was the one who pretty much made the ending bad in the first place. Probably more EA, since they were the ones who kind of rushed BioWare into completing it. But it's like if you've been playing Mass Effect for over half a decade, and then you get to this ending, you would feel really pissed at this ending. I mean, technically, I didn't really start on the first Mass Effect. I started on the second Mass Effect, which is stupid nonetheless. But really, it's like the ending. It's just, for any Mass Effect fan, it can't be defended, can this ending? It's always been like a symbol of hate. It's the one bad thing in this franchise, or the one thing that can't be redeemable in any way or form. Then the extended cut came out, and then things sort of helped themselves. At least we got to find out what happens in the end, like the aftermath, and a few extra new scenes about what was confusing people, of like how Shepard got to the Citadel and stuff like that, how Hackett knew that Shepard was on the Citadel activating the Crucible and all that stuff. Like a few extra cutscenes that help clear some things out, which I will explain in a minute. And the extended cut really did help out for the ending of Mass Effect 3. Like I said, it shows you the aftermath of each of your choices, but it kind of has more than just one outcome. Like, for example, the Destroy ending has probably three different ways of how it could end. Like, you have the good, like the full galactic readiness and fleet preparations. You have like very minimal effort, which is basically destroys everyone, and you have like one that's sort of in between. And there's like at least 2 for the control ending, which, since Shepard assimilates into the Crucible and takes control of the Reapers, there's like 2 different endings as Shepard monologues on the events that will come afterwards, like as he looks back on his life before what he did on the Crucible. And it depends on which shepherd which path you took, depending on the Paragon and Renegade path, as the monologue sort of changes depending on which one you concentrate on, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then there's the synthesis ending, which is pretty much having a combined mind for the organics and the synthetics. And I thought it's interesting, but the thing is, out of all these endings, people try to depict which of these endings in some way is the best one. In my case, it's the Destroy ending. I know you have to sacrifice the Geth and ED, which does suck, but Mass Effect, I felt like, was never going to have a full-on happy end. There was always going to be a sacrifice in some case. The Control ending just feels kind of wrong to go for that one, since it's what the Elusive Man in Cerberus has been trying to do, and you find out that they're right, and it's not what you were planning to do in the first place. I feel like that's the route for if you had a Renegade Shepherd, which would make a lot of sense, since you mainly agreed with Cerberus if you were Renegade. And then the Synthesis ending just does not feel right. Forcing the galaxy, all the species just forcing them to accept the combined consciousness, the fact that they would all be able to feel each other's thoughts and feelings. There wouldn't be any secrets, but it's the fact that you do this without their consensus is kind of just doesn't feel right, and it's the fact that it just makes them into sort of superior versions of husks. And that's really why I go for Destroy ending, because that's what you set out to do in the first place, which is destroy the Reapers. Yes, it means having to sacrifice one of the coolest species in the galaxy and probably one of the coolest characters in the series. One of the coolest, not the coolest, but sacrifices always happen in war, and this is no exception, and it really does suck that you have to sacrifice them, but they can be rebuilt maybe some way. There is still some sort of data that's hidden somewhere for the Geth and ED, so they can be replicated, so that they can be brought back to life. I mean, it's very possible to bring back the Geth and ED. True, they may not be the same, well, especially for ED's case, but at least they might have a chance to come back, so Destroy ending in the way makes the most sense, and it's pretty much what you set out to do in the first place. But before the extended cut came out, there was always this battle between the fans on whether a certain theory was pretty much correct or not. This theory was called the Indoctrination Theory, and I really did not like this theory. A lot of people did, but I just didn't. It just did not feel like it would fit very well into the whole, Shepard is indoctrinated. I just feel like that couldn't be possible. It just doesn't feel right. Like, all of a sudden a Shepard is indoctrinated, and yet this entire time he's been fighting Reapers and has been in close contact with them, and yet, true, he's never felt these effects, but I feel like now, at the very ending of this game, the fact that he now has he's being indoctrinated, I feel like as someone who's a strong-willed Shepard against the Reapers, it just doesn't make any damn sense. And that's why I always thought that the indoctrination theory, in some cases, was bullshit. True, it explains, the whole thing, and, the whole Crucible activation and all that was just a dream, but because of the extended cut DLC, which does really help out with some of the things that were part of the indoctrination theory, I just really didn't like it. I'm probably one of those few people who really just didn't really give much of a damn about it, because in some areas it just didn't feel right and just didn't make much sense itself. Even though technically it would have been the best option at the time, until the extended cut DLC came out, I was pretty much just ignoring it most of the time, and then pretty much when the extended cut DLC, I pretty much just gave up on the indoctrination theory altogether. It just felt like something that the fans are basically trying to create, so that they at least could find a simple enough ending to understand and to make it less confusing. And eventually, obviously when the extended cut DLC, BioWare then, of course, did confirm that the indoctrination theory is bullshit themselves. So yeah, the indoctrination theory was always a sort of a touchy subject to me when it came to the endings of Mass Effect 3. And I never really thought it was a good idea in the first place, even if they did do it. I mean, the fact that Shepard was indoctrinated at that point in time, never really made sense with the rest of the other games, with the fact that he's been fighting the Reapers the entire time, and only then at that point does he become indoctrinated. It just doesn't fit very well with the whole ending either. It's like, yes, he's been lasered by freaking Harbinger, and then suddenly he's indoctrinated. And yeah, it makes sense when he gets taken control of by the Elusive Man, but that's the Elusive Man taking control of him, so it really shouldn't have much of an effect. But yeah, I think the Indoctrination Theory was just a whole lump of bullcrap to begin with, and was just something for the fans to keep a hold of something so the ending could make sense in some way. But there is a few other things that do make me think it is a bit believable in some cases. Like, the only time I ever think it's believable is when Shepard in the Extended Cut DLC is lasered by Harbinger, because as we've seen throughout the entire game, no one has survived a direct hit by a Reaper beam, as it will tear you to pieces. Yet somehow Shepard survives. Yes, he's pretty much on the verge of death, but somehow he survives. He's not freaking scattered into atoms. That's the only point in time where I think the Indoctrination Theory actually does make some sense, because even I don't think Commander Shepard would survive a blast from that, especially since it's Harbinger, who is like the oldest Reaper, so of course he'll probably be the most powerful one. But yeah, other than that, I think that's probably the only reason why the Indoctrination Theory could be correct. But everything else, because of the Extended Cut DLC, just doesn't make much sense now. Finally, there's the whole ghost kid thing. This, which is technically part of the ending, this, in some ways, like the whole thing about the kid not being real, which also helps out with the Indoctrination Theory, I don't really know anymore. I just ignore that whole kid aspect thing, the whole theory. And then the whole, like, the thing at the end in the Crucible, I do like how the option at the end, you can, like, shoot the thing and then basically you've doomed your entire galaxy to extinction by the Reapers. Which feels like probably the... I don't know what kind of ending to think about that one, the fact that you just doomed your whole galaxy to destruction by the Reapers. But I don't really know what to say about the ghost kid thing, because sometimes I don't necessarily understand the entire thing myself sometimes, and yeah, this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people. It's the Mass Effect endings, and some bits I don't fully understand, like for example the ghost kid thing and some other things. I do understand like how the endings work and all that, but yeah. So I think overall the Mass Effect 3 endings was a very poor decision on like BioWare's part. If EA had given BioWare another year to work on Mass Effect 3, then we probably would have gotten a lot better endings than we got in the first place. I feel like this is EA's fault really, because they didn't give BioWare enough time to create the game. And of course this backlash for the entire franchise, because 5 years later on, when Mass Effect Andromeda has come out, people still sore after the ending, even though Mass Effect Andromeda has come out, which is a whole new story. I have bought that myself, and I've just started it, about probably an hour and a half in. So I'll be getting that review done at some point. Probably give it like a week or so for me to get it done. But overall, I think the Mass Effect 3 endings was a major mistake for the franchise, and it's really something that could have been replicated if BioWare would give them more time. So it really was something that could have been avoided if there was more time given to them. So yeah, that is pretty much a bit of a rant on the whole Mass Effect 3 endings, about how I really feel about them. There's gonna be more of these kind of videos at some point, just me talking about some random stuff, and from my viewpoint, and then I'm not sure, there'll probably be another one coming soon. And so yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Leave a like down below, comment about what you think about the Mass Effect 3 endings, and I shall see you guys next random video.